This week we are covering subqueries, and subqueries are a little bit more difficult, harder to understand. Some people struggle a little bit more with them, but basically it is a nested query. So you have your select statement, and it is a select statement that is inside your existing select statement. So what the heck, right? Make sure you read through the chapter, and in the lecture demo, I basically go through the way a subquery is typically used. So you can use it in a select, you can use it in a from clause, you can use it in a where clause. You can also use it in a having clause. But where you will typically see it used is in a select to create a new column, and you will see it in the where clause. So I have specific examples showing you how it's used. So this first example, it is being used in a select to create a column. And so we are using Northwind, we've got product name, and then we have something called units ordered. And you'll see I have units ordered equals. It is set to equal the results of this aggregate query. So we are totaling the quantity in the order detail table. That's all this select is doing. We're taking that total and we are putting it under units ordered. So you can see in the output, we got the product name, and then we got the total units ordered. Okay, so a subquery is quite useful in this respect because it's allowing us to see the total number of units ordered for every single product. Another place you are going to see it is in the where clause, and that will help filter the results. So it helps select the rows that you see. And so how this works is you're going to be checking for the values in a column to see if those values are in the results. And if the value from the column is in the results of the subquery, then that row gets displayed. So in this example, we're looking for vendors that are in California. Okay, so in the subquery results here, we're gonna have all the vendors from California, and it's going to be checking each vendor ID to see if it is in this list. And if it is in the list, then the row gets displayed. So subqueries are quite useful in where clauses, and they're also useful in select statements. And so you're going to want to go through this because it does go through, lots and lots of examples. So you get a pretty good idea of how subqueries are used. And there's links to the interactive examples. Okay, and in this little interactive example, the keyword that we're going to be adding is, or the keyword that's got added is all. But I think we are going to change this. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, let's set the quantity to 0. Okay, so we're selecting the product name from products when the product ID, okay, is in the results of this little select. Now, if we change all to any, let's see what happens. Nope, doesn't like any. All, any, or some. Okay, so you guys can kind of play around with this just to see the difference between those keywords. The all keyword returns true if all of the subquery values meet the condition. Okay, so all worked. Okay, the other ones did not. Okay, so quantity equals 0 was the condition being checked. Okay, and so you can just kind of go through here, get an idea of how these different queries are used. You can actually kind of modify W3 School's site and practice using them. You could also copy and paste into SSMS and use them there too, especially if it's Northwinds that we're looking at or one of our databases. The textbook assignment. The focus of this is mainly on the types of subqueries that you'd be using most often. And so the first one, I believe we end up doing where. Yep. So the method I do is I kind of have my first query, and then you can actually run your subquery as an independent query just to see what it does. And then you can combine them, which I think is a good method. Because that way you get the sense that the subquery is its own full query. Here we've got in the where clause a subquery, and it's calculating the average unit price, and we're only going to include rows where the unit price is bigger than the average. Okay, and here's another one where we're checking the average, but this time it happens to be sales total. Okay, and then again, we have some more in the where clause, just so you guys can kind of get used to that. And then we're practicing using them up in the select. And just remember, when you have a subquery up in the select, it is going to create a new column. And so one way to do it is to give that column an alias. Another way to do it would be, I could say most recent invoice equals, and then I could have the result of the subquery displayed. Okay, just like this one, units ordered equals, and I've got the result of the subquery. Okay, so you guys can kind of go through this. It'll give you a pretty good idea of what you can do with the subqueries, and there are videos that go with. The lab assignment. So because subqueries are difficult, there's only one task in the lab assignment that requires subqueries, and it is task 3. The rest is a review of things we have been doing all semester. Okay, so that is really important for you to note. The only task that requires the subqueries is task 3. You are going to be asked to use some scripts. Pull this up and run them. So you're going to download the scripts, and let me look at the text files here. So you're going to create a database called Test Corp, and then you're going to be creating some tables. And you will notice one of the tables is called order. Order is a key word, okay? So if you want to do a query with that table, you have to put it in brackets. Otherwise, it's going to flag it as an error. Okay, so as long as you put the word order when you're talking about the table, you put that in brackets, you will have no problem at all. Okay, but that is the way that you're going to have to key your queries, because order is a key word in SQL. So this is the script that you're going to run to create your tables. And you can see it's got all the commands that we just used recently. And aren't you glad you don't have to key in all of this? Okay, so you're getting lots of data here. Okay. And then once you do that, and again, I have the example about putting the word order when you're talking about the table in brackets. Super important that you do that. What you are going to be doing is in the Test Corp database, you're going to create queries that answer these questions. Which customer buys the most Test Corp products? Okay, spends the highest total amount on the order. There is more than one correct way to do this. Now, in this example, I am assuming the individual orders instead of a total of all orders by a particular customer. So that is an assumption I'm making. So when you are doing the exercises, you are going to have to make assumptions. So all you have to do is put in a comment of what your assumptions are. Okay. And so then I know where you're coming from when you're doing this exercise. And depending on your assumption, your output could look different than mine. And that's okay. Okay. You just need to answer the question. How many customers do we have in each country and city? Okay. So again, if you're making assumptions, put those in the assignment. Okay. And your assumptions could affect your output. Okay. So your output may or may not be the same as mine, and that's okay. The third question, display all customers and any suppliers who may live in the same city as the customers. Okay, and so in the sample output, I did make an assumption, and I'm telling you what that assumption is. And if you make assumptions in yours, you need to indicate that too, because it might affect the results. Task 2, again, no subqueries here. Okay, so for task 2, you're going to modify the table structure. Okay, so it wasn't that long ago that you guys created your database and your tables. So this is a nice little review. Task 3, this is the one that does require subqueries. So you're going to, and I pretty much limit them to using the subquery in the where or in the select. And you know that if you have it in the select, you're going to be creating a new column. Okay. And so this one, where it wants unit price and quantity, it wants all of these items here for products that have total amounts larger than the average. So this tells you it's probably going to be in the where clause. In fact, I'm telling you that down here. Okay, so trying to give you some hints. The next one, our boss wants to see the number of orders each customer has made. So in the directions, it says you're going to need to create a new column and assign it the results of the subquery. So that means it's going to be in the select. Then the final one, because there's only 3, boss wants to see products with order quantities greater than 100. Okay, so because we are basically looking for rows that have quantities greater than 100, you know that it is going to be in the where clause. Okay, so read through these. And then finally, you get to CTEs, okay, which are little tables you basically create. Okay, so that is the assignment. Hopefully you guys don't run into too many problems with it, but if you do, please ask questions. It is helpful to me if you are having problems with the query, if you email your code to me, the entire query, because then I can just copy it and paste it into SSMS and run it. And then I can tell you what the problem is. If you screenshot an error message and I can't see all your code, it's hard for me to help you. Okay? I actually have to run the query. So if you copy the whole thing and paste it into an email, I can help you. As far as the quiz goes, it is worth 30 points. There's 25 questions from chapters 5, 6, and 7. Each question is worth 1 or 2 points. And you can take the quiz 3 times, just like the other ones. and the highest score is going to be recorded. And I should mention that you're not going to be able to see the results of the quiz until it closes. And then for chapter resources, I've got the slides that go with the chapter, the examples from the book you can download and take a look at, and then I have a link to a video on SQL Server queries, subqueries, just in case it's helpful, to hear somebody else explaining them. So if you guys have any questions or if you run into problems, please let me know and have an awesome week.